So one night, this girl is sitting on the curb outside her house, and she's chatting with a friend. And suddenly, this guy walks up behind her and he's like, "Are you Martha?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then the guy, he reaches into his hoodie pocket and he pulls out a pew-pew and bang, he unalives her. Now the killer, he gets away, but police, they investigate. And pretty quickly, they feel like they have a suspect. This guy, Juan. Because Juan's brother was involved in a separate murder case, and the girl, Martha, she testified at that trial. So police think Juan unalived her, and the SWAT team, they go to his house, and bam, they arrest him. And when police sit Juan down and tell him he's charged with murder, Juan's like, "What the fuck? That's impossible. I didn't murder anyone. I was at a Dodgers game that night." And police are like, "Psh, prove it." And so Juan, he shows them his ticket stubs from the game. But the thing about ticket stubs is, I guess, anyone can just buy tickets. It doesn't mean he went to the game. So police, they don't believe him. And they tell Juan that eyewitnesses had seen him shoot Martha that night, and that those witnesses identified him as the shooter through his mugshot. But of course, that's a lie. There were no witnesses who identified him through his mugshot. Police are just trying to trick him into confessing. But Juan, he doesn't confess. He sticks to his story. And police, they end up charging him with unaliving the girl, Martha, and they throw him in jail. And so he's there in jail waiting for his trial to start. Here's his mugshot. Now during this time, Juan's lawyer, this guy, Todd knows Juan had nothing to do with Martha's murder. But this is going to be a really hard thing to prove. And to make it worse, they're going up against this really hard ass of a prosecuting attorney who has allegedly never lost a case and who always pushes for the death penalty. So if Juan loses this, he's fucked. Now, Major League Baseball games are usually televised, so Todd, he starts getting a hold of as much TV footage of the Dodgers game from that night as he can. And he starts scrubbing through it, trying to make out the faces in the crowd, looking for any sign of Juan. But Juan is just nowhere to be found. And so Todd, he goes back to Juan and he pushes him to remember something, anything else from that night, anything that can help prove he was there at the game. And then Juan finally remembers something. He remembers seeing this comedian at the game, Bob Einstein, aka Super Dave, aka Marty Funkhauser from the TV show Curb Your Enthusiasm. He is there. In fact, Juan remembers that not only was Bob Einstein there, but he was actually sitting in the same section as him. And Juan's pretty sure there were cameramen following him around. And so Todd is like, "Hey, that might be something." And so he goes and he calls around and he gets the contact info for the camera crew that was there filming Bob Einstein that day. And that camera crew is HBO. And they were there that day filming an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm with this guy, Larry David. And so Larry David and his producers, they agree to let Todd come down and look through all the unreleased B-roll footage they shot that day to help his client out. And so, a few days later, bam, Todd is there at HBO headquarters, sitting next to Larry David, scrubbing through unreleased footage of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and looking for any sign that Juan was at the game. And so they're there, combing through this footage, and suddenly, boom, Todd spots something on the screen. And it's Juan, just sitting there, in the stands, hanging out at the game. And Todd knows that this news is pretty good. And he immediately gets screen grabs of the footage and he sends it right to the DA's office. And there's some cell phone records that end up helping his case too. But after 5 months of being in jail for a crime he didn't commit, kapow! Juan is finally released from jail. And all the charges against him are ultimately dropped. Here he is with Todd holding screenshots from that footage. And the good news is the two guys who were ultimately responsible for unaliving Martha, well, they were eventually caught and they got life in prison. While Juan, he ends up filing a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles for wrongful arrest and wrongful imprisonment. And ultimately, he's awarded a settlement of $320,000. So at the end of it all, I bet police were like,